Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this session, session 8 in our Essential Skills Insight series. So this session is going to be delivered by Suzanne Flynn on effective mentoring. We'd also like to thank very much Flowgas for powering this series and for continuing to power this series, looking forward to the future sessions. So before I just hand over to Suzanne, I'd like to go through some housekeeping. So hopefully you can hear and see us and find the chat function and the Q&A function. So you'll use the Q&A function at the end of Suzanne's session to ask questions. So there'll be a 15-minute Q&A at the end of Suzanne's session. So please use the Q&A function to address your questions to Suzanne. Also then, if you're having any problems, any technical difficulties, use the chat function or contact the CPD training team on 01665 1305. And then at the end of the session, you'll be redirected to an online survey, and we'd really wish for you to give us some feedback, some suggestions for the future series. So thank you very much. And now it's my pleasure to hand over to Suzanne, who'll deliver this session. Thank you, Suzanne.
Thank you very much, Elva and Lubna. Good morning, everybody. So as Elva said, my name is Suzanne Flynn. I am the facilitator for the for Engineers Ireland's Effective Mentoring Programme. And that particular programme is a suite of supports for companies that either have a mentoring programme or are looking to develop a mentoring programme within their organisation. So part of my role there is working with mentees and mentors all over the world. All over Ireland itself, but also in the UK. We have some people here today from the UK, which is fantastic. In the US as well, in South America and South Africa. So I've worked with a lot of mentors and a lot of mentees. And hopefully today I'll be able to bring something very tangible for you that will be of benefit to you that you can bring away into your own programs. So a little bit of the agenda today, what we hope to cover will be a definition of mentoring. Sometimes there can be confusion maybe about what mentoring actually is, and what that actual word stands for. We'll also look at the difference between mentoring and coaching. It's a question that I get asked every time that I ever deliver a facilitation or a training to mentors. We're also mainly going to look at the 4O mentoring model. Again, having something that's very tangible, a framework that you can actually use during your mentoring conversations and when you're meeting with your mentee or your mentor can be very, very beneficial. It can keep a structure to it that can help you as you move forward. And also we'll then look at the structure of a mentoring meeting. Again, having a little bit of structure can be very beneficial in your endeavors. So firstly, definition of mentoring. So mentoring in organizations, as it says here, is a specific relationship between two individuals based on a mutual desire for learning and development. I emphasized two there because it is between the mentor and the mentee. There will always be a strategic reason and a strategic goal to the mentoring relationship, depending on whatever organization you're working in. But it's important to know that the fundamental aspect of mentoring is between the mentor and the mentee. And it really is about learning and development, a desire for learning and development. The main learning and development will be on the part of the mentee, and the whole idea of mentoring is to support that mentee to learn and develop. But also as mentors, and I know there'll be many mentors in the room today, we learn a lot from it as well. We learn a new mindset, a new approach, a different way of thinking sometimes. So it is a mutual learning piece. It's also a non-reported form of assistance and replaces none of the organization's structures in place. What we mean there is that it is an additional support, an additional piece. It doesn't impinge on what the manager does or head of function, and it doesn't impinge on HR policies and procedures, but it is a standalone separate piece that's in alignment with other supports within the organization. Its functions coalesce around knowledge exchange and behavioral change. Anybody working in the field of learning and development will know that behavioral change is the golden nugget. The golden nugget when we're doing anything is somebody learns something, but then that means that they change their behavior, they change the way they do things, hopefully for the best and for an increased performance perhaps. So that behavioral change is very important. But both parties, both the mentee and the mentor, will also learn from each other and therefore be able to take something from it, which is very rewarding. So this is just a quick little slide. Sometimes this also comes up in a lot of conversations, which would be the difference between sponsorship mentoring and developmental mentoring. So sponsorship mentoring emphasizes sponsorship and hands-on help from the mentor, whose power and influence are important to the relationship. It's usually used, and it's more a US model, but it's usually used with regard to maybe entrepreneurship and bringing somebody forward, where the mentor has more experience in a particular field and is actively engaged in promoting that mentee. The other type of mentoring is developmental mentoring, and that's the one that we generally tend to work with and use. It's more UK based and European based, and we use this a lot in Ireland. So developmental mentoring emphasizes helping people to do things themselves and is concerned with co-learning as a result of deeper self-awareness. So one of the best things for mentors at the end of that mentoring relationship, that the mentee feels that they no longer need that mentor anymore. They've progressed, they have built their confidence, they feel more empowered and engaged to move forward. So that's always a good sign for a mentor. What a mentor here is trying to do in developmental mentoring is to ensure that the mentee learns, develops, rises in confidence, and really no longer needs their input because they've moved on to the next place. So another question that comes up constantly, and I hope you'll find this beneficial to you today, is the difference between coaching and mentoring. David Clutterbuck is the main go-to in this particular area, and I would suggest looking up his books and anything that he has on the subject. But this is one of the pieces that is always asked, and hopefully you'll find this beneficial. So coaching, and this would be on-the-job coaching. A lot of you present here today will be coaching your direct reports, your teams, your colleagues, whatever place you're sitting in within the organization. So coaching is concerned with the task. Basically, are you trying to help somebody with a particular task to learn how to develop their competency in that particular task? Mentoring, on the other hand, is concerned more with implications beyond the particular task. How is somebody presenting themselves? How are they working in their environment? How are they developing as they move on to the next step? So it tends to be not task specific, more all of the competencies and skills that we need to develop and move forward within our careers and roles. Coaching focuses on skills and performance. Basically, do I have the skill to do a particular piece, and am I performing to the highest level on that particular role or area? Mentoring, on the other hand, focuses on capability and potential. So maybe at this moment in time, I have a certain skill level, but with the help and support of a mentor, maybe that I can actually increase my skill level, broaden my capabilities, reach the potential that I have as I move forward in time. Coaching, primarily a line manager role. If you are a manager today, you will be coaching your teams and coaching your direct reports on how to do a particular task, how to reach that performance level. Whereas mentoring is not the same relationship and tends to be better done offline. Now, what we mean by offline now, considering we're all online as we speak, is really that it's done outside of that relationship, outside of the manager relationship. So it is something that's much more broad, holistic, and away from that work environment. The agenda in coaching is set by or with the coach. So the manager will decide whatever it is in conjunction with the person that they're coaching, what they need to do and how they move forward. Whereas with mentoring, the agenda is very much set by the learner. Now, where we say learner here, it's another word for the mentee in this particular regard. So the mentee really should come forward and set the agenda. What does the mentee want to work on? What competencies do they want to improve? In coaching, the emphasis, the feedback is emphasized feedback to the learner. So a coach will say, or a manager will say, this is my feedback to you. This is how I feel you're doing at this particular moment in time. In mentoring, the emphasis, the feedback, the emphasis and the feedback and its reflection is by the learner. So the mentor would ask the mentee, so how are you getting on? How do you think you've progressed there? How do you think you're doing? Making them sort of come up with how they feel that they're getting on at any particular time. Again, empowering them on the other side. Coaching typically addresses the short-term need. It can be anything. I need to be able to do a particular skill. I need to know this particular software package to move forward. Whereas mentoring is typically a longer-term relationship. In mentoring programs, which I'm sure a lot of you have as well, you'll have a set term possibly, maybe over the course of a year, but you are always looking at how somebody is going to move forward. Where are they going to be in a year, 2 years, 5 years in their particular skill set? So lastly, coaching, feedback and discussion is primarily explicit. You'll be very clear and concise in feedback when you're coaching a direct report to somebody in your team. Whereas with mentoring, the feedback and discussion is primarily about implicit intuitive issues and behaviors. In other words, how do you feel you're doing now in that particular regard? What do you feel you need to do going forward? What does success look like to you? How are you finding it? So hopefully that clarifies a little bit for you, and these slides will go on to you afterwards, hopefully a handy one to keep on board. So we've mentioned already, when we are mentoring, we are looking at the skill set or the competencies of the person, the mentee. And competencies, we use the word quite a bit, and sometimes there can be a little bit of clarification needed as to what that is exactly, because otherwise it can be just a word. So when you're working with mentees, we would ask, what competencies would you like to work on? What do you want to improve or get better, or where do you want to be focused? And competency is a combination of three elements. So one is knowledge. Knowledge is the know-how. You get a degree, you go on a course, you undertake training, and you gain the knowledge for how something is to be done. Skill set, on the other hand, is the can-do. So we can have all of the knowledge in the world, but if we don't actually do the particular piece, we won't get that skill set. We won't learn what it means to be actually able to do whatever it is that we want the skill set to be. And the last piece that tends to be sometimes forgotten a little bit, but is of huge importance, is the attitude piece. And that's the will do. So I can have all of the knowledge in the world. I can be doing something on a regular basis and have acquired the skill set. But if I don't have the right attitude, if I'm not open to suggestions, if I'm not thinking in the right way, if I'm not a lifelong learner or curious, maybe then I won't have the right attitude that it takes to bring the other two pieces together and become competent in a particular area. So when we look again at our mentees, what kind of competencies would we generally look at? Well, these are some of the ones that come up time and time again. Effective communication, well, absolutely huge. And no matter what role you have, no matter what sector you're in, no matter what area you're working in, having really good, strong, effective communication skills are important, are hugely important, no matter what you're doing. And if we've learned anything during the current situation, is that the communication skills, our way of communicating, our ability to communicate with others has even increased in importance. Some of the other competencies you might look at with mentees can be critical thinking, stakeholder engagement, and that will be internal stakeholder engagement as well as external stakeholder engagement, influencing skills, presentation skills. Again, COVID has taught us that the way we might have presented or communicated to others in the past has now changed, and we need to be very competent in that particular goal. So when we're looking at competencies, let's take one of those and apply the 4O mentoring model to that. And that's the model that we're actually going to use today. The reason for having a particular model is, again, a lot of times in the conversations that I have with mentors and mentees and also with organizations, sometimes mentoring can be seen as a little bit woolly, a little bit sort of not very formulaic, or doesn't have a good enough format to it. It can be seen as a little bit light sometimes. Research, and there's plenty of research in this area, has shown that that's not actually the case. But one of the ways that you can make sure that when you're having those mentoring conversations, that it doesn't turn into just a conversation, just a very nice conversational piece, friendly conversation between two individuals, is to utilize a mentoring model, something that can keep you on track through the course of the mentoring relationship. So I'm going to take presentation skills here today as an example, and we're going to apply the 4O mentoring model to that and see how we work on that one. So the first O in the 4O is objectives. So a lot of times when a mentee, and some of you here in the room today will be potential mentees, when you meet your mentor for the first time, you can have maybe a little bit of difficulty in deciding what it is that you're actually going to work on. Now, again, if we don't really make a decision upfront as to what is going to be looked at, what the objective or what the goal is, then at the end of the mentoring relationship, it's very hard to evaluate whether it was worthwhile, whether both parties found it beneficial, whether the mentee actually grew or learned or progressed in their development from it. So it's really important at the very beginning to actually decide what that objective is going to be. Now, objectives in a mentoring relationship can change. We can start off with one objective, and then as that mentee grows, maybe a different objective will come into play. We can also, maybe through the insights of the mentor, a mentee can think that maybe we'll start with this objective. And then again, through that interaction with the mentor, they can come up with maybe a different one. And if the objectives change, that's no problem whatsoever. That's just a sign of growth as well. So when you come into that mentoring relationship and you apply this model, and you'll apply this model to each meeting that you actually have, the first question is, what is the objective? What is it that the mentee wants to work on? So again, some of the ways that you can actually define what that's going to be is, what is it going to look like at the end? What does success look like? So as you look at that destination, where is that going to take you, and what are you going to have achieved at the end of it? We then look at alignment. Is it in alignment with the current role that the person is in? Is it in alignment with the strategic objectives and goals of the organization? So in other words, if the mentee is working on an objective that's not in alignment with where they currently are or wish to be, or is strategically connected to the objectives of the organization that they're working in, well, then that can be a difficulty. So there should be an alignment with the organization and the role that the person is currently in, as depending on what they want to do as they move forward. Does that objective involve others? Do you have others got an overview of it? Do you need to include others in the particular objective? Do you need to outsource and have a look to see who can help you in that regard as well? Is this something that you can work on your own, or do other people have a say in it? So where in this objective is it involving others? At what point and to what degree? We'd look at the boundaries and the process involved in the objective. So in other words, how far can you get with this particular objective? What processes need to be in place to help you with the particular objective? Who owns it? Do you have full ownership of it? Or again, when you're looking at who else is involved, are there others involved that have ownership of part of this objective? Again, these are all questions that you would ask and clarify in the objective piece. It also really expects the mentee to look inwards a little bit as well. So sometimes the mentee can come in and say, well, I'd like to work on my leadership skills. That's always a great example. But leadership skills are, as we all know as well, there's lots of different skills that are involved underneath the heading of leadership. Plenty of pieces that go with that. Communication skills, delegation, your ability to lead, your ability to get engagement from your team. So there's lots of different pieces that are underneath that. So again, that can be quite broad, and the mentee needs to look at, well, where am I on that particular journey? Is that just a word and I'm just really not actually that engaged to move forward with it? So one of the good things to do with this one is, when you're looking at objectives, is where does the person sit now? Where does the mentee sit now? What's happening for them at this moment in time? Is this a good, clear objective that can have a tangible outcome to it, and that will help them to progress? The second O is options. So say for the objective, the person, again, as I said, we'll use an example of presentation skills. The person has decided that their objective to work with their mentor is presentation skills. They require presentation skills in the role that they're in. They need to be able to talk to the board, to talk to internal stakeholders, to get their message across with external stakeholders, with partners, with project managers, with whatever partners that you might be working in. It's part of their role. It's a really tantamount skill set that they need to have, and an important one. Okay, so we've clarified that. Really good way to move forward, something that's really necessary and something that will be good for you to have. So what are the options open to you when you look at increasing your presentation skills? Again, I'll use that as an actual example. So the options can be, well, I have a lack of confidence in my presentation skills, and I need to get that confidence up. So some of the options open to me would be, I could go and do a course and learn what the fundamentals, really good practice within presentation skills are. There are wonderful courses that can be done for that. That will also help me to understand how I present, what the perception is of me as I make a presentation to somebody. Am I getting my message across? So I can do a course. That's option number one. Option number two could be, well, actually, I've identified somebody within my organization, or somebody that I know, who is known as a really good presenter. They're known as being really competent in this area. I could approach them and ask them for their tips, their advice, to try and understand how they became so good in this particular competency set. A third option could be I work with a really, really good team and I could put a presentation together and I could present it to my team. It's a smaller group. I could ask them then for their feedback, their good, honest feedback. What went well? What didn't go so well? What could I do better? So in other words, I could use the resources of my colleagues around me and use that as an option as well. A fourth option could be I'm a little bit unconfident and therefore I am a little bit not so keen to put myself up in an area to be judged, for want of another word, on my presentation skill. So perhaps I could look externally to see where I could increase those skills. Perhaps I could present as part of STEPS. I could be involved in the STEPS initiative and present to schools, talk to children within the school setting. I could do a presentation for Engineers Ireland. I could speak at a seminar. I could speak at an event, and therefore kind of hone my skills by actually doing. So there's 4 sort of options that are open to me there, and I'm just using presentation skills as it is. So again, just as this slide says here, explore where am I now in my presentation skills, and what is it I want to be like? How will I be better? Why is the need for action, and how will I change? So again, what is the motivation around it? What are the options? This is what we're looking at here. But for mentors, it is important, this little piece here with the no judgment. A lot of times the mentee will come up with an option that you might think as a mentor is not a good one, or is not one that you would have taken, or is not really the option that you would have thought. The no judgment piece here is about, that's okay. People will come up with different ways of doing things, different ways that they feel comfortable. And as a mentor, you can help to guide them and support them in the ways that the options that they're coming up with. You can ask really good questions like, so if they're going down a route that maybe the option wouldn't be such a good one, and your experience tells you that maybe that's not the way to go, ask questions around, well, what are the pros and cons to that? Is here, rated here. What is there any downsides to that particular option? What are the challenges around it? So by your questions, you can kind of figure out and help them to figure out what the best options are for them. You would rate the options as well. You would rate them as to between 1 and 5, which is the best option for you. So 1 to 5 is going on a course. I like going on courses, and I'm afforded the time and the capability to go on one. So that would be a good high option for me. Or on the flip side, actually, I don't have much time to go to a course. So that's rated fairly low. Maybe one of the others would be a better idea for me. This is a partnership approach when you're looking at the options with mentees, and mentors and mentees together will look at seeing, have you explored all of the options? Are there more options that are available that maybe neither party thought about? Are there ways that will be better and works better for those involved? Always be open and honest. The mentee has to be open and honest about the options that are open to them, and the mentor will also be open and honest about whether managing those expectations and helping them to decide the options that are there. A little bit of time and thought should be placed on this. Are we exploring everything? Or, as sometimes we will do as individuals, we will just go to the options that we always think about. We'll always go to the default setting. Again, that's the way the brain works. So we might go to just what suits us or what we think we've done before, and maybe we're not exploring wider the more options that are open there. Between the mentor and the mentee, they will give feedback. The mentor, I should say, will give a lot of feedback on those options. Use that experience as a mentor that you have to sort of guide and support that mentee in some of the options that they've brought to the table, and also help them to think of others that they haven't done so. So at the end of this particular piece, you should have a good few options. It shouldn't be 1 or 2. There should be several for the person to actually work on and use. The next piece, number 3, is now that we have a set of options, we've actually explored it and tried to broaden it as much as we can. What are the optimal solutions here? So looking at whatever those options are there barriers in certain areas? Are there challenges in others? A good amount of challenge, or is there almost a setup to fail in particular regards? Are we managing expectations correctly? In other words, I'd like to do, again, coming back to presentation, I like to do a course, but I won't have time to do a course. So therefore, that is not the optimal solution for me. Let's look at something else. So let's bring that piece in with the 4 options that we spoke of earlier that we came up with, and see which one of those would be an optimal solution. Just again, to give some idea of this. So again, we've spoken about the course, going on a course. Yes, I can go on one. No, I can't. I don't have the time to actually go on one. Approaching the person within the organization that's seen as an actual expert in this area. Well, it's an optimal solution to me because I've actually got a relationship with that person. I've been on a previous team or previous project that they work on. So that would actually be quite helpful to me. I'd be able to go to that person. They're here, they're on site, they're within the organization. I can get to them quickly. And I think that because we've already developed a relationship, they would be really open to me gaining some experience from them. Flip it again. Actually, I don't know that person really well. I've never come into contact with them, and I'm a little bit hesitant in actually going to them and say, "Hi, can I get some of your experience or some insights from you on this particular area?" So that would lower that down as an optimal solution for you. The third one was that I would get some experience externally. Go to my team was the third one. So yeah, I have a great team. They would be really helpful to me. They would give me some great feedback, and I'd feel comfortable with that. I really, really would. So therefore, that would be higher up in your optimal solutions. Actually, I feel a little bit wouldn't be so keen to put myself out there. I'm fairly new to this particular team or department, so therefore I don't know my colleagues that well. So therefore, that would bring the optimal solution down a little bit. The fourth option that we looked at was, will I do something externally? So part of STEPS, part of Engineers Ireland, Taskmaster, something that I could actually go and kind of get my skill level up. Again, that's an optimal solution in whereby I feel I could increase my confidence, increase my skill set and ability in that particular area, and then bring what I have learned and my increased performance in that particular area, bring that in to my organization and to my team or to my role here. And I feel that that would actually be an optimal solution for me, because I don't feel that others are watching my growth so much or watching to see how I learn. Therefore, I could increase my skill set and bring it in a little bit more newly developed. It's an optimal solution to me. Actually, I don't have an awful lot of areas open to me whereby I could increase my skill set externally. I have young children, I'm busy, I'm very busy with a full job as it is. Therefore, getting those opportunities to do a little bit outside could be quite difficult. And I don't see that there's an awful lot of options open to me. I will be better off with the work-life balance maybe, or in my current situation, bringing it into work and trying to find a solution or an option open to me within my work environment. So therefore, that would decrease the optimal solution rate there for you. So we've now looked at the objective that we're going to look at. We've now looked at the options that are open to us to try and make sure that we can reach that objective. And then we're looking at, well, what are the pros and cons of the optimal solutions? Therefore, we can decide, and I'm only looking at 4 here today, which order and which way we're going to address. That brings us to number 4, the last O, which is outcomes. Hugely important. So once we've decided what the optimal solutions are and how we're going to progress that forward, we then now to have an action plan to do that. I'm sure again all of you will know that if we don't have a time frame with an action a plan, if we make a plan of some description and we don't put a time frame to it, then it really just becomes a to-do list, a wish list almost. We have to have actual tangible time frame to the particular piece, and that's where the SMART format again comes into play. SMART is the best way of actually looking at your goals, achieving goals, setting a goal in the first place. And for those that are not aware, SMART stands for specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time frame or time outcome. So we can use that format when we're looking at the action plan coming out of the optimal solution that has been decided. So case of this mythical person with the presentation skills. So you've decided that you're going to go to the team, do a presentation to your team, and you're going to do a course. You're going to go and research and do an actual course. When will you have that done by? So the next time we meet, how far along in that process will you be done? Will you have already presented to the team and have gotten the feedback? Will you have already done the course, or will you have just researched the course and be trying to get time to actually go on to the course? So really looking at a proper outcome and time frame to it. And then always examine possible barriers. If we don't anticipate and examine possible barriers at this stage, then when things come up and that go into our way, or boundaries or challenges that come into our way, we need to, at this stage, have identified what do we do when that comes up to make sure that, again, we can achieve the objective that we're trying to do. So that is a framework, a 4O framework of how to actually put a process in place when you go into that mentoring meeting and that engagement. So another little piece here, just as we come to the end, which might also be helpful to you, I hope, is putting a format onto your actual meeting. So again, mentees or mentors and mentees will say to me, especially mentors will say, it started off really engaged and very strong, and we had plenty to work on, plenty of things to do. And then during the course, during the phases of the mentoring relationship, it sort of took a dip in the middle. And we sort of lost focus somewhere along the lines. So when we concluded the mentoring relationship, we couldn't see, when we reviewed and evaluated, we couldn't really identify tangible outcomes, things that were really achieved, real things you can feel. So another, besides using the 4O mentoring model to keep your mentoring piece on track, another way is to actually establish a few pieces of format to your mentoring meeting. And I'll just go through this one a little bit quickly for you. So this is not really engaged with the first meeting. In the first meeting, you're going to build rapport and do all the things that are necessary to get that relationship on track to start going. But every meeting that you have after that, it's important to maybe keep a little bit of a structure to it. We all know, even with our meetings on Zoom and through Teams and online meetings, it's incredibly important to have a structure to the meeting and an agenda, as something that we know we're trying to achieve, so that at the other end we can see that the meeting was worthwhile. So same is applied to mentoring, even though it is a very holistic and friendly and broad approach, having a tangible piece to it can also help. So in your mentoring meeting, always start with a check-in. No matter how many times you met before, always have a check-in. This is a part of re-establishing rapport. What's happened to you since the last time we met? Has anything changed? How are you today? What's going on for you at this particular moment in time? This also helps to establish the relaxed professional atmosphere that is really a tangible and an important part of a mentoring relationship. Gain consensus on the purpose of the meeting. So even though you knew what you were working on the last time, always reset. What is the purpose of the meeting today? What are we going to work on? What are we going to talk about? What is the objective for today's meeting? If you're not sure as a mentor, or if you're not sure as a mentee, then what each other is saying, well, then just clarify. So when you say to me, we're going to work on your presentation skills, or the fact that you've done your course, can I just be sure what we're actually talking about here? Is it looking for feedback on the course that you did, or what is it that we want to actually address? So clarify. It's always a good idea to clarify all the way through. Challenge assumptions. Again, for both parties, but for mentors in the room, always challenge anything that's said that you don't feel is either maybe, and correct's not the word I'm looking for, that maybe there's an assumption made there. So again, if you're assuming something that the person says, the mentee says, no, I'm really good at presentation skills now, I'm confident. Challenge that assumption to make sure that, well, actually, how does that represent itself? Why, in what way do you feel more confident? What has happened that you actually now feel that you're doing really well there? Again, that helps the mentee to recognize what has gone well and how that progression is going, but always challenge assumptions. Stimulate analysis. Always during the course of the meeting, make sure that you are stimulating and looking at the detail and analyzing the particular piece, so that the devil is in the detail, and the same applies to mentoring and when you're talking about whatever that mentee wishes to talk about on the day. Draw on your own experience as a mentor during the course of the meetings. Where you do that and how you do that is important, because again, in developmental mentoring, we as mentors do not want to give direct advice. We want to make sure that the mentee is learning how to the right approaches, the approaches that work for them, good problem solving skills, asking the right questions of themselves and the area that they're working in or around them. So we just really want to make sure by asking good questions that they come up with these ideas themselves. But at that point, it's always good as well to bring your experience into the fray, to let them know how things went for you, to bring that piece to the table. Build confidence and motivation. That's what we're, as mentors, we're always trying to do during the course of a mentoring meeting. We want to make sure that we're, looking at what went well. How are you moving forward? What is the positive engagement here? And then, as you've gone through the course of the meeting, it's always a good idea to summarize maybe about halfway through. So we've talked about A, B, C, and D. We've looked at your objectives, your options, the optimal options open to you. Did I miss anything? Are we sure we're on the same page? We make sure that there's nothing that's been missed in the conversation. And then when you come to the end of the meeting, always agree actions. And the actions should be agreed by both parties. So in other words, and that's your options piece here, your outcomes piece at the end of the 4.0. So what have we agreed? What are we going to try and have done by the next time that we meet? I, as the mentor, I'm going to connect you with somebody within the organization. I'm going to send you on a piece that might be helpful to you. I'm going to send you some a book that you might be actually find helpful, or a link to a webinar or a piece that could help you in your development. The mentee has agreed to try and either go on a course, have more experience, connect with somebody within the organization, look at they've agreed on their optimal solutions, and they should have progressed those by the time they come into you. Agreed the milestones. Well, that's really across the whole of the mentoring relationship. Summarize, as I've said, outline your agenda for the next meeting. Before you leave one meeting, check to see what is it we're going to talk about on the next one. What are we going to help to progress the next time we meet? So you're already beginning to prepare, both parties are beginning to prepare for the next time they meet. And then as a mentor, any mentors in the room, always ask for feedback. How did it go for you today? How did you find that? Was that beneficial to you? Did you find that helpful? What would you like me to do differently the next time that we meet? Rather than asking, feedback sometimes is seen as something that's done at the end of a program. How did the mentoring program go? Did the mentors feel that it was beneficial? Did the mentees feel that they found it very beneficial as well and helpful? That's one form of evaluation, but certainly always evaluate during the course of that relationship how things are going at the end of each meeting. So that brings us hopefully to the end, to the time there for you, and I hope that that has established something for you. We've looked at the definition of mentoring. We've looked at the difference between mentoring and coaching. We've also looked at the 4.0 model and how that works. And we've looked at a little bit of structure with regard to the meeting itself, a start, a middle, and an end to the actual mentoring meeting. I hope you find that helpful. And I always end with this slide here, which is really about mentoring in its fundamental piece is about trying to create a new mindset. And if we can create a new mindset, then we have the opportunity, the ability, and the hope that we will actually have a new result going forward. So thank you very much. Thank you for your time. I'll just mention that as part of the Effective Mentoring Program, we have an open course on mentoring for professional development on the 23rd of June, and that's for mentors. So as part of that course, we look at the strategic goals of a mentoring program. We'll look at the skill sets required to be a really effective mentor. We look at the characteristics of a really effective mentor. And the idea is that at the end of that particular program, people that are going to become a mentor or want to refresh their skills as a mentor will again have increased their confidence and be raring to go to meet those mentees. Thank you.